because those are, two of those are borders. Um,
Hi, my name is Maria and I'm the owner here at Calla Lily Quilts. I want to welcome you today to a brand new series that we're doing on fabric. Today we're going to talk about how to straighten your fabric and get it on grain. This is really important because if you don't put your fabric on grain first, you're going to have a lot of bias in your quilt, and that's going to make it harder for your pieces to match up, and then therefore the quilt is going to have to be squared up a lot. So I want to talk to you a little bit about fabric first. These are two fabrics. One is a motif fabric and the other is a Northcott fabric. What happens with fabric is it all comes in a roll, and it's called gray goods. And then they run it through high-speed processors to stamp the pattern on your quilt, on your fabric. So if that fabric going through that high-speed processor slips just a fraction of an inch, then it's going to be off grain. So I'm going to show you two examples today. I know you've all been to quilt shops where they have cut your fabric and quilt shops where they've torn your fabric. Most quilt shops, like us, cut your fabric because customers don't understand why we're tearing it. So when you tear the fabric, I'm going to show you how to do that. If I need a quarter of a yard, a third of a yard, I'm going to buy a little bit more so that I have room to straighten my fabric. So what I did is I came in from each side and clipped about an inch, maybe a half an inch, and I'm going to tear it. Now the tear has to go all the way to the bottom, and you're going to see that mine stopped right there. So what I'm going to have to do is clip a little bit more and tear again. So I'm going to go a little bit less this time because I don't think I'll need as much. And tear again. Now this time it went all the way down to the selvage if I can get hold of it. And then what you're going to want to do is take one string like that and make sure it goes all the way to the bottom of your fabric. If it does that, then you know you're on grain. Now, if I had a large piece of fabric, like a yard or 2 yards or something that I was using, I would only do it on one side. And the reason I would do that is because 2 yards is an awful lot to put on grain. But with this, I'm going to do both sides. So I'm going to go on the other side. Now, remember, both were only torn an inch to begin with. Now, this is your difference from the top to the bottom of your fabric. So you can see how this side is larger. It actually did slip. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this fabric, and after that I'm going to show you how to put it on grain. So I'm going to go in about an inch on both sides. Now this is a wide back, so that's why the length is a little different. And I'm going to tear this one. See, we didn't go all the way to the bottom. See how big it starts up here and how little it gets at the end. So I'm going to go at it again. Now this fabric took about 2 inches to put it on grain on this side. So again, this piece doesn't show as much, but you've got to remember this started out at the top as well. So let me do the other side, and we'll show you again. We're going to cut it in about an inch, and then just tear it. Now here's what you should have seen to begin with. This is the bottom, and this is the top where I cut my inch in. What that tells me, that's almost 2.5 inches there. Well, yeah, it's exactly 2.5 inches. So that would have put a ton of bias in my quilt. And bias is just the stretchy side of your cut. So now we're going to put the fabric on grain. So what I've done is brought it over here and laid it flat out. I'm going to spray best press. I'm going to mist best press on it. Don't use too much. And then I'm going to press the fabric going down on its sides. Because you'll notice the curve to the sides, that's where the stress came in on the tear. So what I want to do first is put that down. And again, I can't stress to you how important this part of the process is because of the bias. So So again, as you can see, 2.5 inches off is a lot. So I'm almost finished with that. And then we're going to pull this section up. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a new fold in the fabric. I'm putting it on grain. Now these don't have to be exactly right. They're not going to be, because sometimes you have a lot over the edge, but you want them to match to the top like that. So all the way across, if you can zoom in, you can see that I'm right on the line with both of them, the selvage line. Now, I don't normally do this, and after you've done it a few times, you won't have to either, but to begin with, so it doesn't move, I want you to put your fabrics selvage to selvage. Okay, and then we're going to pin it. And again, this is to make sure that your fabric doesn't move as you're pressing. And if you don't do this and it's not selvage to selvage, then what's going to happen is you're going to end up with those crescent moons and your strip sets and different things like that. So it's really important to get this part right. Okay, now I think we've about got this done. Now, if you'll notice, I have a ruffle right here, because when I straightened it back up on to grain, it's not going to come down perfectly. That's where we're going to recreate our fold. So see here, the fold's actually back here, and in recreating it, it's going to be more up to the front. This one doesn't want to behave. There. So what we're going to do is, to begin with, I'm going to press that down. And if you'll notice, I'm not ironing the fabric, I'm pressing the fabric. Okay. So now I'm going to pick it up and lift it and press it to get that new fold in it. Now this fabric is back on grain, and you should be able to cut perfect strips out of it. So it's ready to go. Now this fabric, you remember, wasn't as far off grain as the other one, so we won't have as much work to do. So I'm going to go through the same process again, and I'm going to best press it. I prefer best press to starch just because best press is cleaner. It doesn't flake, and you can get it at any local quilt shop. So what I'm going to do, again, where I've stressed my fabric, I'm going to press it so that I've got a flat fabric again. Okay, now that I've pressed it, again, I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to match it. Now again, I recommend that you pin it when you're beginning, because the top will move quite a bit. Now again, I've got that fold that's going to be put ahead of where the fold was before. So I'm going to pick it up and press it in. So now I've got a perfectly straightened piece of fabric. Now I want to come back over here because I want to show you how to get that yucky edge off. Not a real technical term there. We're going to use our ruler, not our mat. But to make sure that we're straight, a lot of times I will just run it across the mat to be sure, and we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this bottom line right here, the number 23, on the bottom of my fabric. And I'm going to make sure that these lines up here, I'm going to have to use the 1/4 inch line, lines up on there. right, now that we're lined up, whoops, and I just moved it, isn't that great? Now that we're lined up, I'm going to cut off the damaged part, and I've got a straight line again. And I know that's straight because I come down here again and run it on my line, on my ruler, on the bottom and on the top. So that's a quick lesson on how to straighten your fabric and prepare for your projects. I hope you'll join us in our next lesson that will be on rulers and how to use them. See you at the shop.